I'm joined here today by the one and only Vicente Luque, who's set to fight very, very soon against Stephen Thompson at UFC 244. A great fight, of course. I don't have to tell you that. Thank you so much for joining me, man. How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing great and really excited for this fight.
I'm sure. What was your reaction when you got news that you'd be fighting Stephen Thompson? I feel like we've been waiting forever for you to get an opponent that's so far up the rankings.
You know, uh, it was crazy because that's the name I called after my last fight. And finally, the UFC heard me and gave me the opponent I wanted. I think I was super excited at first, and it's a fight that I think is the kind of fight I need, to get to that next level. That's why I wanted to face a guy like Thompson. I think he's a top contender and he fought for the title 2 times. He still, has a lot to show in the cage. So I think it was a perfect fight for me to have.
And it was a smart call out, obviously, since the UFC did give you the fight. Where did that idea come from? Did you have someone from your team tell you to ask for a call out? Did it come from yourself? How did that kind of come together?
I kind of looked at all the division, and a lot of guys had fights lined up or were looking to fight someone else. And I felt like Thompson was a guy that wanted to fight, and he had nobody, matched up with him. He wanted to come back after his last fight. So I thought, it's an interesting fight. I did not plan it to be in Madison Square Garden, but I knew he wanted it there. So when he, got to the UFC and everybody, the fight had to happen here, and I had no problem with that. So it worked for me and for him. He got the date he wanted. I got the opponent I wanted, so it was perfect.
And do you think this is a show that the UFC now has a lot of faith in you and your abilities? I mean, they're putting you against the opponent you asked for at this huge event at MSG. Do you think it's finally a good sign where the UFC kind of looks at you?
Definitely, I think that I've been showing every single fight that I am a dangerous guy. I'm a guy that has really championship potential, and I think the UFC is starting to recognize that. I always felt like the UFC recognized me, but I think that they didn't know if I was, ready for the next level. And I think that now they see, yeah, he can fight these guys. He can fight, the big names in the division, and I'm glad for that.
And the big storylines on this pay-per-view is, of course, there's the bad motherfucker belt in the main event. There's a lot of great fights. A lot of people are saying that your fight should be for the nicest motherfucker belt. What did you think when you started hearing stuff like that?
I thought it was pretty funny, and definitely I think that Thompson is a super nice guy. He's respectful, a true martial artist, and I think I'm the same way. I always respect my opponents. I have nothing against nobody that steps in that cage. I know how much work is put, previous to every single fight. No matter if it's my work or the opponent's work, it has to be respected. So I think that we could fight for the nicest guy title.
And how do you look at sort of the matchup in this one? Because it does look like it's striker versus striker, but you guys are, of course, well-rounded. How do you look at the matchup in this one?
I think it's a really technical fight. He is more of a karate and a lot of, point fighting in and out really quick, moving a lot. I'm more of a pressure fighter. I'm more Muay Thai kickboxing style, pressure and try, to cause as much damage as I can. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight in that sense. I have to be really technical and impose my game. And I think he's going to, look to counter me and try to move around, use his speed against me. So it's going to be, on the details. Whoever can manage, the distance better will get the advantage.
And is this training camp any different for you? Because we do know this is, of course, a step up in opponent. I mean, have you had to change anything in this camp compared to sort of your last ones?
For this camp, I decided to come 4 weeks into Florida to train with the guys at Hard Knocks, just because I feel like I have a lot of different guys over there to work with. I had great work with Adam Borks. He fights in Bellator, and he's a well-rounded kid, super quick, and he could, he was trying to do Wonder Boy's game, and he looked like the Hungarian Wonder Boy. So I had a lot of work with many, many good guys, and that was the biggest change, but nothing major. I'm always in between Florida and Brazil. The beginning of my camp was in Brazil with my coaches and everything, and I feel like I had a great camp and good game plan we have for this fight. I think it's going to be a good night.
And you did mention he has that karate style that's extremely tricky. It gives a lot of guys trouble, especially the fact that he's standing sideways. How do you prepare for something like that? Is it about your coaches kind of figuring that out? Is it about bringing in certain people that can imitate that style? What's kind of the key, without giving too much away, of course, to prepare for something like that?
I think it's a little bit of everything. At first, we kind of study my opponent. So I study Wonder Boy. I watch a lot of his fights, my coaches as well, and try to get used to that kind of stance, that kind of movement, just so that I can recognize that. And at the end is getting all that, recognizing his movement and putting my game into it. Because at the end of the day, I have to do what I'm good at. I cannot, change my style because of an opponent, but I can learn like how my style will work against an opponent like that. So I think it's more towards that we lean normally. Believe in what I do, adapt a little bit, something or another, for the opponent, but especially believe in what I do and keep doing what I've been doing.
And I want to talk about your last fight a little bit. Obviously, it was a great one, and we knew going in it was going to be such a great fight. What did you think of the fight overall once it was finally over?
I knew from the start, Mike Perry's a tough guy. I knew he was going to take most of what I could land on him. And I was ready for 3 rounds like that. I didn't, at the end of the fight, I was pretty sure I got all the rounds. Once I rewatched the fight, I thought that first round, was for him. I thought he got that first round. Second round was close, but I still think I got it. And then the third round, I think, was my best round. But it was a tough fight. It was definitely a tough fight. And I felt good. I felt cardio-wise really good. I felt I blocked most of the punches and was able to connect really well. But I was definitely surprised with his toughness. I knew he could take damage, but after that nose break, I don't know how a guy can pull, through that. It was really tough, and I had the guillotine tight. I was putting, a lot of power on that, and he already had the broken nose. He went through all that as the tough guy he is, and a lot of respect for him.
And a lot of people, they mention his punching power. Of course, he's getting a lot of knockouts. What did you think of his power? I mean, did you get a chance to really feel that? What did you sort of take away from that?
I think he connected like a good big shots, like 3 or 4 times, and they had a lot of power for sure. I think he's one of the most powerful guys that ever hit me, and I didn't want to get hit again, so I was making sure my guard was up and I was blocking most of the shots. I felt like that's something also I think I felt in the fight. I blocked a lot, but they still connected in my guard, so that kind of shows his aggressiveness. But overall, I think I handled it well, and he's a heavy hitter. I know that I have a hard chin, so I was able to take it and bring back the pressure.
And you did mention the hard chin, and it seems like your past couple of fights, everyone's trying to test that mental toughness. Seems like you're really going through these wars. Well, what's been going on, man? Is it these guys pushing you? Is it the way that you fight? How are all these fights turning into these exciting kind of wars?
I think it's especially, the style of my opponents. I think both Perry and Barberina, they are 2 guys that are not afraid to get a punch, to give a punch. And I'm not afraid of that either, So whenever I face a guy that will stand in front of me and will try to put me out of there, I'm going to try to put him out as well. And I think that's why these fights happen. It's not the kind of way that I envisioned the fight going. But once it happens, once, I try to hit the guy and the guy doesn't walk back, he keeps on moving forward, I just have to put as much pressure as I can. And I'm used to, getting hit. I'm used to, guys putting pressure on me. I'm not going to back down. So if the guy doesn't back down, it's going to be a fight of the night.
And you did mention Mike Perry's nose. Of course, we have to talk about that. At what point did you realize you connect with the knee, but then you guys had your exchanges on the ground? What point did you realize his nose was facing, 2 different directions?
Only at the end of the fight, right? I knew that the knee landed, but I didn't know where it connected. So I really, at that point, as soon as I landed the knee, I realized how tough he was because I felt it. I felt the knee hit something. I didn't know where it was, and he shot for the takedown. So in my mind is, okay, I landed, but he didn't feel anything, so let me just keep on going. Then I jumped for at the same time he shot, he took me down, I jumped for the guillotine, and I was putting pressure. I didn't realize he was bleeding until my corner, Gilbert Burns, he screamed at me and said, hey, a lot of blood is coming out, keep squeezing. So I kept on the squeeze, but he went through it. But only at the end of the fight I realized his nose was broken.
And you did mention looking back at the fight, the judging and everything. What's going through your mind when you're hearing the scores being read out loud, and you hear, of course, your score, and then you also hear Mike Perry as well?
At the moment in my mind, I was kind of surprised. I thought I had clearly won the 3 rounds, but at the same time, I didn't watch the fight. I was fighting, so I know what kind of shots I blocked. I know what I felt and what I didn't feel, and I know what kind of shots I landed on him. So I never try, to at the first moment have a one-sided opinion. I'm gonna keep my mind open. So I kind of was like worried. I thought I got all the 3 rounds, but at the same time, you never know what's gonna go on. You never know what kind of fight really happened, what kind of fight other people watched. So I kept my cool. I got excited. I got the win, but I wanted to make sure and watch the fight many, many times to make sure what happened, And definitely the first round, I needed to be more aggressive. I think I could have stepped it up a little bit more to have, the clear win. But anyways, a win is a win, and I'm definitely happy with that.
And Stephen Thompson, he's coming off a knockout loss to Anthony Pettis. You're someone with a lot of power. You tend to knock your opponents out, especially in these last couple of fights. Is that something that you have in mind when you sort of, I assume you watch his footage and you come up with a game plan. Is that something you think about, or do you try not to let that kind of impact your game at all?
I think every single fight, I do imagine myself knocking out my opponents or submitting them. So against Thompson, it's not different. I do think that that's a possibility, but I'm never in there looking for that. I'm not the kind of guy that I'm going to, every single punch I'm going to throw to knock the guy out. I'm going to work my way. I'm going to try to find my range, connect as much as I can. And once I find that distance, if I see an opening, I definitely will go after the knockout. And that's just my style. I think that's why I have so many finishes and I have so many exciting fights, because at the same time, I'm a technical guy, and I try to get in there and find the distance and find the range. Once I find that, I don't hold back. I will go all in, and if I find an opening to knock him out, I will try to do that.
All right, and I have just one more for you. How do you see yourself getting your hand raised at the end of the night?
I think a knockout is a possibility. I don't think it's going to be an early one. I think Thompson is really good at the movement. That's going to be the challenge at first. Try to find that distance, and once I find the distance, I'm going to put up the pace, and I think a knockout is a big possibility.
All right, well, we look forward to watching it. I say before every one of your fights, but we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great one. Thank you so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.